Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for October 29th, 2021. And I'm Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen. And also present are Antonia, Cristina Chumias, Gabriel Almeida, Lucien Colum, Marcos Lima, Offer Shao, Ralph Kohler, and Anna Gomez, and just joined Aaron McHale. So thank you all for coming. At the end of the last meeting, I mentioned that um, one session at NedCamp coming up will be this weekly meeting. I had my dates mixed up. NedCamp is next month. I have a different conference today. Also, I want to warn you that this meeting is scheduled for 10 a.m. Eastern time, and that will probably cause some confusion next week when we will not have changed back to standard time. 2 weeks from now, we will change back to standard time. So if you're in a part of the world that is currently on daylight savings time and moves to standard time next week, it will be an hour off for you just next week. So I think, as usual, we have a good mix of back-end developers, front-end developers, designers, and I don't know that any of us are certified usability experts, but I think that the diversity we represent serves well for discussions on usability. Also, if anyone on the meeting finds it easier to type rather than talk, I do keep an eye on the chat window, and I will read your comments into the recording. Except I'm not going to read jokes about abolishing daylight savings time. So unless there are other issues people would like to bring up, let me look at the issues mentioned on the meeting. So 324-5345 is the issue for today's meeting. The first one linked there is something that Jim Birch suggested, and he was on the meeting, I think, 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, but had to leave early, so we didn't get to it. And I think I'll leave that until he can join us again at some future meeting. Derek, or DWW, is never able to attend these meetings because of time zones. So let's have a look at one of the issues that he asked us to review. So 324-5622, module name context missing for help and permissions link on admin/modules. I think I know what that issue is about. I just pasted the link into the Zoom chat. And it points out that there's a growing pile of module-specific links on the page admin/modules. The configure link includes a visually hidden span, the X module, for context to satisfy some accessibility requirements, but the help and permissions links do not. Let's see, is there a screenshot here? I don't see one, but let's see if I have a running Drupal site. I should be able to show you what he means. I guess it's not currently running. I can fix that in a minute or two. And Aaron and I already had some discussion of this issue with Derek on Slack, and also Andrew McPherson from the accessibility team. And putting in visually hidden text is not ideal for accessibility, but it's better than nothing. And currently what we have is nothing. So I think this issue is intended as sort of a step in the right direction. So what I'm talking about is here. So these links down here, so the permissions link, the title is just configure permissions. The link text is just permissions. And there's no indication of what module it's permissions for. So also, I see a few more people have joined the meeting. Beatrice Rodriguez, Keith J. Am I missing anyone else? Thank you for joining. So I guess specifically, Derek asked us to confirm the wording for each link and decide if we should remove the title attributes once the main link text has better context. And he asks us specifically to look at the proposed resolution and comment number 11. Aaron, have you looked at this issue recently?
Not in the last few days, so not since the discussion in Slack.
So including the visually hidden text, the permissions would say configure module name permissions. So in the example I'm looking at, it would say configure file permissions. And just permissions would be visible without looking at the code or without using a screen reader. And then the help link would be help and then visually hidden text for file. And what does comment 11 say? He suggests for changing the help link to a full sentence instead of help for file, it would be get file help. And that would be more consistent with the permissions link, which is already, I think, manage module name permissions. What's a good module that has permissions? Content translation has permissions, doesn't it? So this just says permissions, but I guess that's part of the proposed change, is it?
Biji, while you're on that page, I'd be curious to see what the configure link currently does, because I noticed this issue specifically it doesn't include the configure link. So that one obviously already has a must have oh, I see it in the summary there. Yeah. So is the configure link worded similar to that?
Yes, the configure link already has some text, I believe, some visually hidden
Yeah.
text.
I guess my only sort of slight concern, well, I have a couple of slight concerns, but the first one was just if we have the word configure in the text for the permissions link. I don't know if that could cause any confusion with the link that says configure. That would be my only reservation with that wording.
Okay, so we already have configure the content translation module, and the proposal is configure content translation permissions.
Yeah, so I guess that leads into my sort of a slight other concern is if you were using a screen reader, right, and you're tabbing quite quickly across the module page. So let's say you get to the title, like for the section for content translation. So your screen reader reads out content translation, then you tab and you quickly tab past all the description stuff, and then you start tabbing. The first things that you probably want to hear are things like our help permissions configure. So those keywords should probably be the first words that your screen reader reads out. Because if you, for instance, if you hit that help link, you get help, you'll get help for module or like, I don't know, help for content translation module sounds better than the other way around, which would be like content translation help. And if the permissions like reads in the format of configure permissions for module, and that could quite quickly, if someone is very quickly tabbing across that, could easily be confused with the configure link. So I would be quite keen that we keep those keywords at the start of each of the sentences, if you like, so that if you are quickly tabbing across that with a screen reader, you're not accidentally going to enter on the wrong one.
Okay, that's a good point.
Can I add or extend your suggestion, Aaron?
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
using the word configure in the permission may cause confusion, even if it's after the permission word, because you would expect like, oh, it's in configuration. That's where I want to click, and that you're working on permission. So probably using words like or just permissions for the module, or set permissions instead of configure, just so we don't reuse the word.
There's also a suggestion in the issue about view permissions. I like that one as well.
Yeah, I think the other thing about keeping it, if I think we should keep these messages quite concise. Like that is our general rule of thumb, but more so if you are, again, if you consider someone who's using a screen reader who is on the modules page, like there's a lot of information on the modules page. If you take any, even a site that doesn't have any contributing modules, you've got just the amount of modules that core provides on its own. Like that's a lot of links, that's a lot of text to navigate through. So the shorter, so even cutting one word off of those links is going to save a sort of an amount of time for someone using a screen reader, right? So the shorter we can keep those links, the better, I think. So like anything, I guess that would like I would be in support of keeping it simple, like permissions for module name, like configure module name.
Excuse me, Gabriel says view or check permissions would work too. My only concern is to be too verbose and somehow crash the good readability. Um, Personally, I'm leaning towards Aaron's suggestion that we lead with the word that's currently visible, um, help permissions or configure. I'd like to be consistent and keep it short, and I wonder if just help for content translation is better than help for content translation module or help for the content translation module. And to Aaron's point, adding the single one or two words like the or module um, makes it is problematic if you're actually using a screen reader and have to listen to those words. So in the context that you're looking at the modules page, maybe the words the and module are redundant and we could just make it help for content translation permissions for content translation, configure content translation. Did I say help content translation? Gabrielle is questioning that. Help for content translation? Or are you suggesting strike removing the word for? Yeah, you're suggesting removing the word for. I kind of like the word for, but if the principle is to keep it short, then certainly removing the word for would follow that.
I think there's like a balance between like keeping it short but also keeping it readable. So like simply saying help content translation is a bit of a it almost feels like the word for I think it is a useful word because it I don't know what the linguistically correct term is here, but it says like, you know, if you think action for thing, so like help for content translation, help for views, like the word for just helps to separate what the action is from the name of the thing that you're doing the action on. So I wouldn't go as short as removing the word for, but I think that's the only additional word we really need is the word for.
Okay. Gabrielle agrees that makes sense. And shall we ask on the issue that as long as you're doing this, that we make it consistent and remove the words the in module from the configure link? So it will be configure content translation, permissions
Yeah, I
for,
think
and help for content translation.
yeah, consistency is good, and also we should make sure that the same principle is adopted for the other issue. I don't know if we're looking at today, but the one around adding the project homepage link. I think make sure we have the same pattern there too.
But one detail to keep in mind is also that the link gets quite long if you have a module name, which is even longer than, for example, configuration translation. Then you have 3 buttons or maybe 5. If Derek's other issue gets in, then that place gets a higher cognitive load and it's quite loaded as well, even for sighted users or with who have cognitive issues as well.
Yeah, so I think part of the so I agree with what you're saying, and I think for sighted users, you're generally not going to see the module name because this is just for text that will be visually hidden. But the other thing, and we kind of so we kind of touched a bit of this in the Slack thread as well, is that the visually hidden isn't necessarily ideal, but it's kind of the best we can do at the moment for this. But going back to this screen reader point, is that the other thing you could do with a screen reader is just tab across links. So you can ignore everything else on the page and tell your screen reader, I just want to just tell me all the links. So in that context, if your screen reader is just giving you a list of links, you actually need the module name. Otherwise, you just get a giant list of links that all have the same text, like loads of links that just say help, loads of links that just say configure, right? So you kind of need that additional piece of context there when you're in that mode.
I totally agree. Just had a misunderstanding that the intention now was to remove the visually hidden and present for sighted as well as screen reader users the same content. That was my understanding.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem.
Okay, I guess there's also the question about whether to do anything about the title attributes. Is that in comment 11? Or maybe that was something he asked on the issue. Screenshots aren't great. Ah, yes, this is where he asked. Should we remove the title attributes once the main link text has better context? My summary understanding from what I've heard from accessibility experts is that title attributes are bad. But obviously that's a pretty simplistic view of the situation.
I'm just looking at this. Does it have a? Oh, it does have a title attribute. Okay.
I don't see one on the configure link. Maybe I'm missing it. I do see one for the permissions link.
Yeah, I remember something about title being bad, but I can't remember the specific reasoning for it. So I can't be much more help than you just said. But apparently title is bad, yeah.
And why not just use ARIA label instead?
Is there an advantage of using ARIA label over using visually hidden text?
Well, basically, what the screen reader is seeing then is the ARIA label instead of the, for example, permissions. For example, if you would use ARIA label on the permissions button.
Yeah, I think that what Andrew McPherson said is that the goal is to show the same thing to sighted and non-sighted users. So ARIA labels are sort of yeah, a necessary evil because they show something customizable to non-sighted users, but it's really better to use to have the same experience for everyone, and using the visually hidden text gets us a little closer to that. And Keith J posted in the Zoom chat a link to this www.accessibilityproject.com. I'm not going to read out the URL. The title of the post is Use Title Attributes, and the short answer is don't use them except in special circumstances. So that agrees with my simplistic understanding. And let's just see, there are a few times when using a title attribute is appropriate for frame and iframe elements, providing a label when a text label would be redundant. And if you must use title on images, keep the same as alt. So I don't think either of those exceptions applies to the case we're looking at. Based on the intended behavior for text alternative computation, the precedence for calculating a text alternative should be ARIA labeled by ARIA label alt and title.
So the text suggestion is to use ARIA label by. Right? That's what I got.
That's the one that takes precedence, but I think actually, you know,
That
that's
article
overruling
ends.
all the others. So it's sort of the last resort, and you should use the things lower down on the list if you can. Keith, did you want to?
Oh, just the final line of that article. The long story short, serval uses equal content is probably the thing that you just said, actually. So that's effectively what we're doing, right? By sorting the text out inside of the link.
Right, and that's what Andrew McPherson said. And we're not doing exactly that because we are using visually hidden, but I think that using visually hidden is less of a break in that than using ARIA labeled by, which would be two entirely different pieces of text.
Yeah, I think visually hidden gets us a little bit closer. There's a couple of reasons, I think. The first one is the visually hidden is just a class like any other CSS class. So if you tell your browser to remove all styling, you'll get that text, whereas you wouldn't get that if we used aria label. The other thing is like we can use this to construct a full sentence that doesn't create redundant text. So basically what I'm trying to say is like if we had the link text be just configure, but then we had aria label that said configure for views, that kind of results in some redundant text that potentially assistive technology might end up reading out all of it. So like they might read out configure and then they might read out configure for views. I'm not entirely sure if that's true, but I can imagine some some pieces of software doing that. So by constructing it in this way, we ensure that there is only ever going to be like one instance of that like label read out.
And Gabriel gives us this link to an article on deque.com. I think that's how the site is pronounced, deque or deck. Text links, best practices for screen readers. And Gabriel says, according to this article, aria label would be the most desirable. Not seeing that. I'm seeing a description of what aria label does. Sometimes the visual anchor text, as mandated by the user interface design, is not very meaningful to vision impaired users. One could use aria label or the title attribute or even off-screen text on text links. But what's the best practice on current assistive technology support? Both aria label and the title are listed in the text alternative computation algorithm, with the title having the lowest preference. Is that lowest preference or lowest priority? I'm not seeing that explanation here. Antonia has to drop.
So I think this is the kind of thing where we just have to, like we probably have to defer to our accessibility maintainers like Andrew on exactly which one to use in this case. That would be my guess, because we could end up going down a rabbit hole of what one is better in this particular scenario.
Yeah, and I don't see any mention here of the visually hidden option. So, and yes, certainly I will defer to Andrew McPherson on what's best for accessibility. So I would say that for the issue we've been looking at, yes, we should remove the title attributes, and that will make whichever one had the title attribute will make it consistent with the others. We should include the word for, but we should not include the or module, because less is more, shorter text is better. And we should update the existing one. So what again, it's a configure link that has the word the in module. We should remove those to make it consistent with the other two. So it should be, and as Aaron said at the beginning, we should lead with the word that's currently visible. So help for content translation, permissions for content translation, configure content translation. Is that
that configure is the only one that's a bit like odd, because configure for content translation, configure for views, like if we're going to be consistent, we should do that, but it kind of reads weird just because of the word configure.
Configure is a verb.
Sure, yeah.
permissions or not. Does that
Okay,
help?
that's why it sounds weird. See, I'm not a linguist, so I don't. I can just point things out. I don't know the reasons why.
Oh, I recognize the difference between noun and verb, so I'm a linguist.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do we have consensus on that? And any objecting viewpoints?
Sounds
Gabriel
good.
agrees. And Marcos, okay, I think we have consensus on that. So the only question then is who will post a comment to the issue? Aaron, would you like to do that, or shall I? Or someone else would like to say?
I don't mind doing it, so seem to be most vocal.
Okay. We are about halfway through the meeting. And I believe, Beatrice, you had an issue you'd like us to consider. Can you share your screen and present that? Or if you'd prefer, I can share my screen. If you can walk us through it. I think it was Beatrice.
I brought the issue to us. I don't know who of my team can actually show the issue because I don't have it on my computer, the module. So, but I can try to talk
Okay,
if.
thank you, Lucian.
Okay.
I
Thank
at
you
least
for
don't see the
sharing.
issue. So can you start by reading out the issue number for the sake of the recording?
Okay, hold on a second. It's the issue 3218729. It's about a publish content button on the core workspace module. There was a lot of comments. The patch was applied and they need a review. And then we was talking about needs works or need review because someone brought the subject, the question that if we need that hiding the publish button or disability, which one is a better usability, which brings us better usability to us. So the real question was hiding or disabilitying a button.
So I don't see any.
There is a video
screenshots on
in
this
there.
Say again,
There
please.
is a video attached. There is a video attached in the summary or at some point. At the top, just below the summary, there is the file screen recording. The second row. At the top.
It's between the two patches.
Exactly.
In the files.
I didn't notice that at first either.
Thank you. That was a good.
Browser, and I can only share one window. Let me just click instead of alt clicking. So well, that was the PNG. If I click on this, it offers to download
The mods.
an
Yeah.
MOV file for me, so I can't really. I suppose I could stop sharing my browser. Shall I do that? See if I can.
I think it's quite informative, the video, so probably could be helpful.
Okay, so let me stop sharing that window and start sharing this window. There we go. And so here's a page from the Umami demo installation. And there's this publish content button and the publish button is disabled. There are no changes that can be published from stage to live. So the question is, why do we have this button that takes us to a form that doesn't let us do anything?
It's more like, do we disappear with the button, or do we keep the button and put it on disabled? Do we hide it or do we disable it? I think it's
I think I missed it.
Sorry?
I'm sorry,
Audio.
you stopped talking, or did it cropped?
Probably cropped.
You're recording one more time. Go ahead and talk.
Okay. The real question is in the second page from this video. We have this message saying that there's nothing changed to publish. And the question is if we hide this button or if we just disable, and which one is a better usability experience.
Right. So should we just hide this
Yeah.
button, or should we leave it there but disable?
No, I think she's talking about the second step. I mean, first step is you still have the blue button in here. And once you click on the blue button, you go to the second screen where you have the text that says there's nothing to publish. And in this second screen is where the patch is being applied, and it's actually unsetting the button, which basically means just removing the button. And I think the discussion here lies on whether we keep the button as disabled, but we still have the reference that the action in theory should be publishing, but you can't because you don't have anything to publish, or if we just remove the button. Is that right?
Exactly that. It's that, exactly. Thank you, Christina. There's this screenshot. It shows without the button. And then there was this question on the issue, which is better, to have the button or not to have the button. And I don't have much an opinion on that.
I do have a strong opinion, but I would like to hear the rest of the people first.
I think I know what your strong opinion is, Christina, because I probably have the same one, and that's that we shouldn't have things disabled in user interface, because that's not good. Is to disable things. And I was that your strong opinion?
No, actually it was the opposite.
Oh, okay. Actually, all right.
Yeah, that's strange. We're disagreeing, but yeah. Actually, my thinking was more about if the user is expecting something and the user can't find it, it's going to be confusing to get somewhere where they actually can't do anything. Like, for example, I'm not sure if you all know Figma, it's like Google Docs. They have a button that says save. And once you click in there, they say, don't worry, we already have saved that, but you still have that button that you expect to use at some point, meaning that you still have the action to or the reference. But I would like to hear other opinions because I could probably change. I'm not sure if having a disabled button is the action or the best way forward, but my concern is just taking away context for the user.
And we have a couple of comments in the chat. Beatrice says, I think we could hide the button because we already have a message saying that is not to publish. And then Ralph says, from a user perspective, to be forwarded to a second page where you actually unable to do anything is rather frustrating. I am more in the
Agreed.
direction of Benji's initial comment, why to have a second page at all if no action is possible at all. And then Gabriel says, no idea if this is even possible, as I'm kind of new to Drupal. Why to redirect user to a form that is useless? Why not just display a warning message?
So I kind of agree with the comments from Ralph and Gabrielle, I think. And this seems to be a general pattern in core that like if like we wouldn't display a page with a form that you can't do anything about, so we just would not give you access to that form at all. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but I can't, but I'm pretty sure that is the pattern we usually use. I mean, I don't want to go too technical, but we'd usually just use the access system so that like we just deny access to that page, and that way the first button would disappear as well. Yeah, I think it's just kind of redundant to take you to a page that you can't do anything about.
So, and a general opinion is that instead of hiding or removing the button, we hide or remove the whole page. That's more like it. Instead of the button, the
Yeah.
page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a general agreement.
One question, is it technically possible when you're on the workspace page that you notice that something has changed and then a save would be possible, that on the page directly the button is changed, or so that there's no necessity to go to the second page at all?
Exactly.
Are you asking if it's possible?
Yeah.
Technically possible to not have that button?
No, it's technically possible to keep it inside the page, so that no need for a that the page or the Drupal is realizing, hey, something in the config changed, which isn't saved yet, and from that point on, the save is possible, or the publish.
So if it's possible that when you click the save and instead of redirecting you to that other page, you just stay on the same one. That is possible, if that is, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
I guess the key point here is that the moment that you go to next page, so the system is making the query. Well, it's actually asking at that moment if there's anything. Otherwise, there should be some kind of out of date or something that is checking all the time that there's a change on the page. If there has been something that is different from what it was in there, meaning probably it should rely on JavaScript or something like that because you're not leaving the page.
Yeah, I can't think of a reason it wouldn't be possible, and I don't really know much about the workspaces module. It's part of Drupal I haven't really touched much, but yeah, I technically speaking, I can't see a problem with it, but again, it's not really this meeting isn't really to worry about whether something's technically possible, more what the best usability would be.
That's right. We have the luxury that we don't have to worry about how to do something. We just get to say whether it's usable or not. And there are some more comments, Gabrielle, about the button. I'd rather remove the disabled, but this is just personal preference without a technical reason. Beatrice agrees with Ralph and Gabrielle. Now I'm thinking that is not redirecting to anywhere useful. This could exist. This could not exist, maybe. Gabriel says maybe do the verification before moving to the form page. And Beatrice apologizes for typos. So I think we have some consensus that we shouldn't be redirecting to a page where you can't do anything. We don't know how it would be implemented, but the right fix is on the first page. So instead of presenting a button that takes you to a page where you can't do anything, have some sort of message saying that there are no changes to be published.
Yeah. And then the question relies on the button that we have in the first page, because then we have three options: either having the button disabled, or just removing the button completely. I mean, if we have to suggest what's the best approach on an ideal world, on a UX perspective, what would we suggest? I would personally say not removing the button, because at the end it should go in there anyway. And I will keep the button disabled and then enable it when you can actually save. That's what I would, in theory, or I would just say by default. What people think?
So if so I guess to understand, so if we on the first screen, on, if you like, the workflow like banner or model that appears at the top where it has that publish button, I guess if there's nothing to publish, instead of that button, we could just have a simple message that says like up to date or nothing new, nothing to do. Like that would be something that we could do, so that we don't have a button that doesn't do anything, but we still provide that confirmation that, hey, everything is fine. Like there's nothing, no action required here.
I'm
Well-
thinking that, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking that I like the way that the first page is working right now, the workflow, mostly because I'm used that everything you have to save on Drupal, it's not automatic. So it's just like a double check that it's good. Even if it returns a message saying everything is good, you're good to go, you're clean. So I wouldn't change much on the first page, just the answer of it.
Yeah, so I guess I'm saying the same thing, but I'm just saying that instead of having to click a button to find that out, we just tell you, where instead of presenting you with a button, we just tell you that information right there where the button would be. I feel like that's a bit like cleaner of a step.
Right. I mean, obviously the disabled button would be like the most the easier way, or the easier implementation. I still think it couldn't be informative enough, and probably just having some text, either maybe some text over the button, or maybe replacing by something else, but at the same exactly the same spot where you will usually find the button, and something that would exactly keep the same space, or something like that. So if the user expects a button there to save, that he immediately understands that he can't save, and the reason is whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was
So-
visualizing in my head as well.
Yeah, probably that just the disabled button is not informative enough.
Yeah, because I think there's also some accessibility issues with disabled elements. Like we can't guarantee that, like if you just, depending on what, like say what styling's there, what theme you have, like it might not be obvious to all users that something is marked as disabled, like from a visual perspective. Like we can't guarantee that visually disabling something is going to convey that you know you can't do anything there.
Yeah. Probably there are existing patterns already on a lot of apps or other projects, or I mean, that must be like a typical design pattern or UI pattern
Yeah,
that we could do some research about.
I see Benji's found the screenshot of the stage. So yeah, so I guess what we're saying is if we basically just, if there's nothing to do, if we replace the publish content button with a message, at least I think that's what we're saying, that says like everything's up to date, or like maybe we could bring this issue back to discuss what that wording would be. But it kind of sounds like that's the direction most of us are leaning in.
And just catching up with the comments, Ralph agrees with Christina and Gabriel agrees with Aaron. And yeah, I agree with what you just said, Aaron. That has my vote. And I also agree with what you said earlier. And again, it's just my limited understanding of the recommendations from the accessibility experts is that disabled buttons are a bad thing. So
Yeah.
I would rather, based on that understanding, I'd rather replace the publish content button with a message rather than disable the publish content button.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Christina.
I'm not sure if just the message would be enough. Meaning we are replacing an element that the user is expecting, like it's about an action, like the main action probably on the page, and just like a message, like a small piece of text. I'm not sure if that would be enough, and also it would need to be really or long enough to take a lot of space. So probably I'm not just thinking about the text, a piece of text, and I would be thinking about something visually different. Like a little bit more complex, and not sure if the standard text, the standard message would be the thing to place here. I mean, it's more like a notice or something like that, not just a text, a random UI text that the user will confuse.
So
Not sure if I'm explaining myself.
So maybe using the pattern you described from Figma, we could have the button, but instead of taking us to another page, it would open up a modal or maybe expand a field set or something with the message.
Or maybe we could use the same, maybe not sure if button, but just replacing the text on the button already saved or something like that, or nothing to save. I don't know. I'm just having ideas. I haven't done any research.
So you're suggesting instead of replacing it with a message, we keep it as a button, but change the message. Nobody here but us chickens. But what would happen when you click the button?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just talking like I don't have the answer. I'm just concerned that if we suggest just put there a message, the patch will be just put there a message, and that's gonna be it.
Yeah,
That's my concern.
Gabriel says, thinking about what Christina just said, a warning message maybe wouldn't be the most accessible way to display it. Not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if messages would visually fit here. I mean, messages are not designed to just go in a place that small, and we don't have designs for something that small for messages. So I agree with him.
I don't think a warning message is what we want here, but just some text, which I would refer to as a message, but maybe I shouldn't call it a message at all. Ralph says having a warning message is similar effect like the second page. Not that disruptive like having the second page, but in the same, but in the end, same effect like the second page pattern. Right. I don't think anyone wants to have a warning message, but just a message, or I should stop calling it a message, just some text explaining the current status.
Christina, I wonder if because I think we're all agreed on, as Benji just said, I think we're all agreed on that some text here, but I think the issue is like how we convey that without the user missing it. So I wonder if we, is there a way we can have the text visually look similar or like a disabled button so that it's not actually a button, but it is text, but it presents itself in the same way so that you're still visually drawn to that area. So you're like visually, you expect to see something there.
Yeah, that would be really perfect. That would be something like that. I mean, like, yeah, an area without a button or something like that, but you have like a message or a checkbox. Sorry, like maybe a checkbox or the typical icon like check, like nothing to save or already saved, or I don't know. I'm just thinking loud, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because and sorry to go slightly into implementation, but just while I'm asking a question, I presume our styles allow us to just like take the classes in CSS that make the button look like that and just apply it to like a span or something.
Okay, I'm afraid we're almost out of time. I don't like the idea you're suggesting, but I'll save my reasons for some other time. So I think we have partial consensus here that we should do something on the page that I'm currently looking at in the screenshot, rather than have a redirection to a page where we can't do anything. But we haven't yet agreed on what to change on this page. And I think we'll have to leave it there because of time. So thank you again all for coming and for the lively discussion, and hope to see you again next week. Again, these meetings are scheduled in Eastern time, so pay attention to the time zones, especially next week. Any last words? Some thank yous in the chat.
Nope, thanks everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.